Welcome to the Victorious Living Broadcast with Pastor LeRoy J. Phoenix Sr. Get ready for the living word in demonstration and power. Now, let's join Pastor Phoenix.
As I was praying and meditating on what God would have me to deal with on this morning, God told me to talk about something that is not a popular message in the church. It's not a popular topic, but it's a well-needed topic by the church, because if the church don't understand the truth about this topic, the church will suffer and don't understand why it's suffering. All of us know by now, because of teachings, that we are the church. All of us know by now, because of teachings, that we require, watch this, it's required of us to be taught, and it's required of us to apply the teachings. So I must know what God wants me to know and how to apply it, that I would receive what I need God to give me. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, get your shout on right now. Go ahead on and release it. And I know it's not going to be too much shouting after this. But turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, we're getting ready to talk about tithing and the giving. See what I'm saying? Unlocking the truth about tithing. Many believers in the church do tithe, but do you really understand what tithing and giving is all about? If you're tithing and you're giving and you're not doing it out of expectation, then you don't know what it's all about. Watch this. Many of us, we're looking at the P's and we're getting it all wrong. We're looking at the promises, and all we know is God say he's going to supply this, God say he's going to give this, God say he's going to do that. But before I can obtain the promises, I must master the principles. Not just knowing the principles, but applying the principles. And I'm glad you're quiet, because it let me know that you're listening. I know we're in a season of multiple festivals, but if you were all festival out, you wouldn't be here this morning. I believe you're listening to me. Hunt your neighbor and say, neighbor, we got to get this if we don't get anything else. When we understand tithing, we understand it is purposed by God for us to show that we trust him with what he gave us. In other words, don't ever open up your mouth and lie to yourself and God saying that you cannot afford to tithe. Simply because God would have not given you seed before asking and requiring you to sow. All of us in here, the Bible says God has given us power, ability to get wealth. That means that God has made wealth available for you and I to get it. But the question is, once you have obtained it, what are you doing with it? I must understand tithing is God trusting me to give him what he requires of me to give him out of what he has already blessed me with. Tithing is essential. It's a must. It's responsibility. It's absolutely necessary for all believers. If you are a believer, if you say you are a Christian, then you should be a tither. And I say should be because God honors your choice, but it's really not optional. And many of us mess up our good record because we believe if I miss church, then I'm excused from tithing and giving. And I need you to understand this morning, the devil would love for you to believe that and be comfortable in that, because he knows that if he can prevent you from tithing, he'll get you on that side where God really and truly wants to destroy you. When you read the book of Malachi and you read where God gave the children of Israel another opportunity to tithe, it came because God really wanted to destroy them, because they began to worship other gods and they began to take their tithes and do other things with them. He really wanted to consume them. He really wanted to deal with them. But because of his grace and mercy, he gave them another opportunity. I don't know about you, but I'm grateful for another opportunity. God said, I love you so much that I'm going to give you another chance to get it right. I'm going to give you another chance to get it right. Get this, as a believer, if you are a believer, this indicates to God that you believe in his word. But if you are a believer, there'll be some evidence. Because James 1:22 says, you're not just to be hearers of the word, but you're to be a doer of the word. So if I'm a believer, if I'm a faith walker, I'm going to do what's in the word. I'm not going to pick and choose out of the word and do what I feel I want to do, or do what I feel is comfortable, or do what I feel I can. No, I'm going to, by faith, do what God requires me to do in his word. Because watch this, if God requires it to be done in the word, and he gave me the word, then my strength is in the belief in the word that I'm going to be able to get it done. That's right, amen. Are you with me? Yes, he said, get this. Prove yourselves doers of the word and not merely hearers, because if you're just merely a hearer and not a doer, all you're doing is deceiving yourself. And how many of us have been waiting on something for years and it hasn't arrived yet? You really think it take God years to do what he said he's going to do in your life? So if it's been a long time for me to receive what I say God has promised me, is it God that's causing it to be a long time, or is it me? Because if I'm not tithing and giving to the letter, then God will give me when his grace wants me to have, not when his favor says I should have. Because if I'm not doing what God requires of me, then I'm telling God, you cannot trust me. Many of us, we got credit card bills because we have a spirit of shopping, a spirit of spending. But here's the crazy thing. When that monthly bill is due, we meet that monthly requirement. We set aside monies for our mortgage. We set aside monies for our cell phone bills. We set aside monies for this and for that. But do we set aside our tithes? And I have a question for you. Do we set aside our tithes and our offerings first? I knew you wasn't going to do too much shouting. But that's all right. Thank God he gave me the wisdom to tell you to get it out first. Turn with me to Malachi chapter number 3. This is what's needed. This is what gives you something to shout about. I can get up here and encourage you by telling you what God said he's going to do, but what kind of fool would I be without telling you what God said you must do first? What farmer you know run around bragging about a harvest that's coming who have not sown seeds? And get this, I'm grateful for everybody else, but I shouldn't just be around here bragging on everybody else. I too should have something to brag about. In other words, I can get excited about how God is blessing you, but I better give God a reason to also bless me, that I can talk about what he's doing for me. Because I got news for you, and all of us can attest to this. It's great when we see other people are getting blessed. It's inspiring, it's encouraging, but guess what? It doesn't feel all that good at the end of the day when you go and talking about how somebody else is blessed and you have no blessings to talk about. Yes, Lord, I'm thankful for what you're doing in the house across the street for my brother and my sister. But Lord, I really am grateful for what you're doing in my house. I should have because you said I'm supposed to have. I just need to know how to get what's already mine. Everything God said, watch this, you're supposed to have has already been released. You just need to know how to claim it. You at Malachi 3, chapter number 8, it says, verse number 8, will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? Now right here you got a crime taking place. And what's crazy about it is there's a crime taking place and the criminal don't even know that he and she are breaking the law. I can remember when I was a police officer and you pull people over for violation or whatever, and they sit there saying, I didn't know that was a crime. Then you follow them or follow up to them and say, you know what? That's fine that you didn't know, but ignorance to the law is no excuse. Which means you may not have known you were in violation, but you still have to pay the consequences. And many of us don't even know we're robbing God, but the reason that our lives are so empty is because we are still having to pay the consequences. He said, will a man rob me? Yes, you robbed me. It's a rhetorical question. Man would not be truthful enough to tell God, yes, I'm robbing you. As a matter of fact, you got to be very crazy to say, Lord, I know I'm robbing you. Do you know what the consequences are when you step outside of the will of God? God say don't even answer, because if you're crazy enough to rob me, then I'm just going to believe you're not crazy enough to know you're robbing me. Will a man rob God? Yeah, he will rob me. You say, wherein have I robbed you? You robbed me, God says, in tithes. Turn me down a little bit. In tithes and in offering. You robbed me in what I require of you to give unto me. And that's all believers. That's everybody. Because watch this, at some point or another, even if you're not working, money still pass through your hand. And if money passed through your hand, God say, I require you not to rob me. Because watch this, some of us believe if I get a nickel, that's not enough to tithe. God look over the small things. Baby, please understand, every tree that beareth much fruit was planted by one seed. Are you with me this morning? He said, because you have robbed me in tithes and in offering, ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Watch this. Your blessed seed, when it is given unto God, not only blesses you, but it becomes a blessing to somebody else. Why? Because one farmer plants seeds, but guess what? Apples that are planted and harvested in California are what we eat down here in New Orleans. You have family members all across this nation, and some of them don't even know God, but guess what? They'll be blessed because of your obedience and your giving. Are you with me? He said there's a responsibility for every believer, and it comes in the next verse. It says, bring ye all the what? Into where? Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. And prove me now herewith, said the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the window of heaven and pour ye out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. Now let's look at some keys that will unlock the truth about tithing. Turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, we're going to look at a few things this morning. We're going to look at practice, we're going to look at place, we're going to look at purpose, we're going to look at proof, and we're going to look at promise and plenty. That's a lot of P's. But you need to understand all these P's are your keys to unlock the truth about tithing. Because watch this, many of us are suffering because of a lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge will destroy you. Lack of applying the knowledge that you have received, you will commit suicide upon your very own self. The devil can't stop you. It'll be you stopping yourself. But number one, let's look at the practice. He says here in verse number 10, he said, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse. The practice is the believer understanding that God requires every week for you and I to practice bringing the tithes to the storehouse, coming to church and giving God his offering and paying God his tithe. The tithes does not belong to you and I, even though we're the one that's going out there to do the work. But I have news for you. Who gave you the job to do the work? Who gave you the ability to get the work done? Who gave you the know-how when it comes down to doing the job? Who gave you the opportunity? Everything about all of what you have to get what you get is given to you by God. How dare I act like it's all about me when, watch this, before I got this job, I was crying and complaining about how I can't find a job. With all my education, with all my ability, with all my know-how, I couldn't find work. But it was God who gave me the education, God who gave me the know-how, God who gave me the ability. Then it was God who opened up the door. How can I take ownership of what does not belong to me? Many of us don't understand, but the reason we are walking under a dark cloud is because we have cursed ourselves, because we have mishandled God's tithes. And please understand, he take the tithe seriously. Are you with me? He said the practice is to bring the tithe into the storehouse. Why? Because there has to be meat in my house. There's a lot of practice in this verse, because if I practice bringing the tithes to the storehouse, then I won't have to be questioning, am I proving God? No, it's the practice that causes me to prove him. See, you're going to know when God is pleased with your giving. How will I know? Will all the problems be eliminated? No, but watch this. None of the problems will be able to eliminate you. Because the Bible makes it very clear, when it comes down to your substance, to your money, God gave it to you that it would be an answer for all things, not cause you more problems and drama. So if I'm not handling it right, then that means I'm not going to be able to sleep at night. You think it's a headache, baby, but it's just a problem because you mishandled what belonged to God. You think the devil done creeped up in your house. No, you invited him in there when you mishandled what belongs to God. There has to be a practice, and the practice have to be me repetitiously bringing the tithes into the storehouse. He said in verse 10, bring the tithes, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, said the Lord of hosts, if I will not open up the windows of heaven and pour ye out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 16 and verse number 2. Because the practice is bringing it. I need to practice when to bring it. I need to know when I'm to practice bringing it. Because some of us believe, again, if I miss church on Sunday, then there's no requirement of me bringing God his tithes. No, when you have God's tithes, when you don't come to church, you put it up for when you do come to church. Because it's still required of you to bring it. You have 1 Corinthians 16. He says, upon what? Upon what? The first day of what? Of the week. What the day is? First day of the week. That means everybody in here should have God's tithes and his offering. I'm going to say that again. Everybody in here should have God's tithes and his offerings. Why? Because the day is the first day of the week. Look what Paul was saying in the church at Corinth. He said, listen, upon the first day of the week, let every one of you lay by him in store as God has prospered him, that there be no gathering when I come. Let me read it from another version. It says, on every day, on every Lord's day, each of you should put aside something from what you have earned during the week, and use it, watch this, for this offering and tithe. Because get this, if God has blessed you, you want to always put God first. He said, let everyone, and that's the question, when? Upon the first day of the week. Who? Let everyone. All of us, God expect to be tithers and givers. Because we shouldn't be on our way to church talking about, can I stop by the ATM machine to get my tithes? Looking around the house for pennies and scraping up change, talking about I'm looking for my tithes. No, when you get paid, you know you need to pay God. How would you feel? Honestly, you working a job and it's payday, and everyone has gotten a check but you. Then you go to the supervisor asking, where's my check? He said, I have to go look for it. What you mean you got to go look for it? You didn't have to look for his. You didn't have to look for her. I work just like they work. Why my paycheck isn't here waiting on me? That's how we make God feel. Because every time he blesses us, he looks for us to bless him in return. Voluntarily, yet obligated. Lord have mercy. Are you with me? He say, each of you, that's all of us. That's all of us. It's required of us the first day of the week that we have what belongs to God. And that's the practice. I must practice putting what belongs to God aside. And the first day of the week when I go to church, I must practice bringing it. He say, bring the tithes where? Not your house. Not the mission. Not the little fella on the corner. But specifically, bring it to the storehouse, which lead us to number 2, the place. The place. He says in verse 10, again, we're going to pick this apart. He says, into the storehouse. And I have a question for you. Do you really know what and where the storehouse is? I know I just told you the church, but why is that the church? I'm getting ready to show it to you because some of us really and truly believe that if I go and I help somebody with my tithes, then I've done what God required of me to do. No, you didn't. We just found out what the requirement is. It consists of the practice. What practice? Bringing it to the storehouse. Now, why the storehouse? Why must I bring my tithes and my offerings to church? Let's look and see. He said the storehouse, which is the Hebrew word atzor. Atzor. And that word really means treasury. It means armory. It means a depository, which means you have to see this place as the blessed place of God that harbors the blessings of God that you must make your deposit into. But why here? Because when you talk about a depository, when you talk about a treasury, you can think about a bank or any other financial institution. Why is it I must bring it to God's house? I'm telling you why. Because God said right after that, he says, in my house. Are you at verse 10? You sure? Because it look like I'm by myself this morning. He said, bring all the tithes into the storehouse that there may be meat where? In his house. The storehouse is God's house, not the house you try to make God's. In other words, because you know God is in my house, that means that my house is God's house. That's not the house he's talking about. He's talking about the church. He's talking about here, this place of worship. This place where he has sealed it with his presence. God said it's a requirement for all of us to bring our tithes and offerings to the storehouse. The church. The house where God is and where God demanded his tithes and offerings to be deposited. Remember, upon the first day of the week, let every one of you lay aside and store as God has purposed him. Why and what God has purposed us with the offering and the tithing for? Why is it that I must pay tithes or give tithes? Because God says it's a requirement that you would get more tithes, that you would get more to tithe out of. In other words, there's a law called reciprocity. And it's a law of reciprocation. It's a going and a coming. It's a going and a coming. But watch this. If nothing is going, then guess what? Nothing is coming. If nothing is going, and I got news for you. You can call it all you want. But what you misunderstand is the understanding of calling it is sowing it. I'm trying to help somebody. I wish y'all would have got a little more sleep last night. What has God purposed me with it for? I'm glad you asked. Turn to Isaiah 55 and 10. Isaiah 55 and 10, it says, for as the rain cometh down, which means it's going to always rain, and the snow from heaven, you know, right now it may be snowing somewhere. As hot as it is over here, somewhere else is snowing. He said, but as long as the rain is coming down and the snow coming from heaven, and return it not thither. In other words, we've seen water fall down from heaven, but have you ever seen water go back up to heaven? You've seen snow fall, but have you ever seen snow go back up? He said, please get this, because this is principle. He said, but it comes that it will water the earth and make it bring forth a bud. Why? That it may give seed to the sower. His purpose. You need to understand. God said, I've caused jobs to open up just for you. I've caused people to work on specific jobs that when you go apply, you would have favor to get the job. I've done these things. I've sent people from far and near just across your path that they would help open doors for you. Why? Because I want to give you seed. But watch this. I'm giving you seed because I have expectation of what you're going to do with the seed. You're going to do it. I'm going to give seed to the sower, but I'm also going to give bread to the eater. Please understand, you can't be a sower and an eater with the same seed. I know that this program has been a blessing unto you, as it has always been a blessing unto me. I'm so excited that God laid on my heart to take our ministry from out of these four walls and into your homes. What I need you to do right now is I need you to sit down and send me a donation, that we will continue to remain on these airwaves. If God has been a blessing to you through this program, let us know how blessed you have been. Make the check payable to New Home Family Worship Center of Algiers. Send it to P.O. Box 1990, Harvey, Louisiana, 70059. I look forward to hearing from you. I look ever so forward to hearing from you. If you need prayer, dial the numbers that are on the screen. Someone is waiting to touch and agree with you. Someone is waiting to help encourage you. Someone is waiting for your call. I love you so much. Meet me tomorrow, 411 Opelousas Avenue. Come and receive a word that God has personally just for you. One visit will change your vision. I love you so much. I thank God for you. Have a victorious day.
Thanks for watching today. The Victorious Living broadcast is made possible by our faithful covenant partners. Remember, our vision was made with you in mind.